I want to make sure because last meeting, all of a sudden, we were not doing right. And I don't want to get caught on that.
Okay.
Apparently some did and I didn't, so.
You didn't check your email?
So.
You didn't check your email?
No, it's not that I didn't check it.
Last
week?
No, today.
No, I'm talking about last week.
No, pero they sent us
Okay.
checking the charter.
Because apparently you knew, but I didn't know anything about the
Everybody has the
interviews and
email, it's
stuff.
there.
All right, so what do you think of these guys here? You got this guy here, he's the mayor, right?
Uh-huh.
And the mayor is pretty much the guy who's controlling like the way that the meetings are going. Then you got this guy here. Every time I hear him talk, he sounds pretty cool. It's like, hey, I just want to know what is going on.
How would that affect, this is like a 1 year, or can it be revisited?
Dad,
What?
Dad,
What?
how do you get this to stop falling?
You do that right there. You see that? Right? All right, so then this guy's the cool guy. This is the cool guy that's kind of putting this guy over here in check. And he's all, hey, what's up? You guys knew about it and I didn't. I'm not even important anymore. And this guy's like, I'm not even going to answer that. I'm just going to say charter and hope that you don't know what I'm talking about.
I'm basing on the charter. It doesn't require an RFQ, so that's why I went with it.
And this guy, every time this guy says a motion, he's just like the second motion. So we can kind of say that this guy right here has a string attached to a giant stick up this guy's butt. And every time he says, I motion to do something, this guy just goes, I second that.
Oh, so he's like the yes man.
These three guys are yes men.
Okay, then.
My name is Roberto A. Salinas, commonly known as Bobby Salinas, here in Roma and Starr County. To my family and friends, I am the mayor in Roma, Texas.
Thank you for visiting with us, Mayor. In looking at Roma and what Roma's experiencing, what do you think is the most important thing that people should be thinking about?
Well, a positive thing that what we can say is that the city is under good, effective management. I think the city administration has done a good job. Currently, the downside to that is that we have a dysfunctional city council. Currently, there's a faction of the city council that is very independent-minded, does not work well with myself, with the Councilman Clyde Guerra either. They don't talk to me. They don't talk to him. They don't talk to the city manager nor the deputy city manager. Essentially, we have Councilman Joel Hinojosa, Gilberto Ramirez, and Jose Guadalupe Cantu, that what I call the political faction, because what I'm seeing from them since the November election is that everything they do is geared for political or personal benefit rather than for the benefit of the public.
These are guys that we're constantly hearing talking about transparency. Isn't that the opposite of being transparent?
Well, and you'll see if we continue through this discussion of a few instances where they are the complete opposite of transparency. But yes, this is the group that preaches transparency. You hear it from those three, but you also hear it from other members of their political group. It's a word that I would warn the voters going forward into the March elections and then next November of 2020 elections. You're going to be hearing them preaching this word transparency quite a bit.
From the voters' perspective, we look at like the city council. We think that you guys are constantly in communication, and what you're saying is that half of the group doesn't communicate, well, the majority doesn't communicate with the others.
Well, it does not. They do not communicate. Clearly, when we have our meetings, we have our discussions and all those things, and the meetings run their course the way they're supposed to, and certainly we get that kind of business done. But typically, what we do get done is routine agendas, routine monthly business. But as far as any special projects or special or other works that the city council can cohesively work on together for the greater benefit of the community or of the city, those things are not happening.
How can anybody work seriously? I mean, obviously they feel we've got the majority, we don't even need to talk to them, pero entre más cabezas hay, mejor. That's
certainly that seems to be the attitude, because when they won the election in November, they came in here, they went in there, showing and making sure that everybody knew that they had a majority. It seemed like that was extremely important to them, that everybody had to know we have a majority and we are going to do things our way.
So ya lo traían como plan. We already know what we're going to go do. We don't need to even tell you guys
It certainly appears that way.
I saw you post about the city attorney. What can you shed light on that?
Well, the city attorney, currently right now, the official city attorney is Martie Garcia. As contrary to what people think, I have nothing against her personally. I don't know her. I first met her after the city council hired her. But my problem with her being the city attorney is that she is not qualified for the city attorney. When we issued a request for qualifications, published it in the newspapers, the city of Roma was seeking the services of an attorney firm that has experience, and I believe the words were extensive experience in municipal law. She told us and she demonstrated to us that she did not have that.
Okay, so a lot of people out there, they see the word lawyer and they immediately think super genius who went through, hurdles. How does that happen? Here we have a mayor basically saying, this lawyer is qualified to be a lawyer. I got nothing personally against her, but we needed her to have specific experience in municipal law. And the voters looking at it thinking, pues si es abogada, mi nomás sabe el
Well, yes,
libro.
but we advertised seeking the services of an attorney with experience in municipal law. I don't believe that she serves the best interest of the city as an entity, and therefore not the best needs of the citizens in the end.
If you don't mind, can you give me like an example of like what really just opened your eyes to that?
During the interview, there were 3 attorney firms that applied for the job. One of them was a firm that specializes in municipal law. The other one was a firm that had some experience in municipal law, not too expensive. And the third one was her, with 0 experience in municipal law. And the city council clearly went and chose her anyway.
Because they had the majority and they had a plan and they walked in and that's what they were going to
Well,
do.
they have the majority, they had a plan, but I believe they're also were doing as they're told. They were told to do this. This is my opinion, and they are simply being obedient. They are following orders that were given to them by their political bosses, and so they are required to do this because the way I see it, it's political payback. What they always do, now mind you, you have to understand also my perspective in all of this is that I know how these people work. I used to be politically associated with this group until I saw that everything that was being done and everything was only to benefit one person, one family, or just a few. In other words, everything that's being done by this political group is not for the greater good of the community, but rather for the greater good of that political group.
Wow. How long did it take you to figure that out? Like, what did you see?
Well, unfortunately, it took me a couple of years before we saw that. And it wasn't just me. It was a lot of people. Originally, that group numbered probably between 80 and 90 people when we were, at our peak. And in the end, there was 2 people that stayed with them. Everybody else separated from them.
So 90 people were all a part of what they thought was something good for the community. And
we all thought it was something good for the community. It was a big political movement.
And 88 of you all figured out this is wrong.
Yeah, so roughly those are the numbers. But this is, and I'm talking back in 2012, 2013, I believe, when we organized the 4 for Roma to try to make changes in the school board. That was a very strong group, a very big group, and obviously very successful. But over the course of the next few years, the majority of this group, or almost everybody, just separated from them because we saw that there was absolutely no good benefit for the public. Everything that was done had to have a political angle to it, and it had to have political benefit for that political group. And in my point of view is that I didn't get into this of, running for city council or running for mayor to serve myself. I didn't do that. That's not what I got into it for. So I said, this is not for me.
The opposition, the people that didn't vote for those groups, some of them suspected that was the case. If you could tell them anything right now, what would you tell them?
I would tell them, I'm sorry because I was wrong.
There's not, when they pull the wool over your eyes, there's really not much you can do.
Yeah, but I'd be the first to admit I made a big mistake. And while I was part of all of that movement, I made several mistakes. And some of those mistakes we still have to deal with.
And who doesn't? We're all human. We all make mistakes.
But I don't have a problem admitting it. And the thing is that we make these mistakes, but we learn from them and we move forward and try to avoid doing them again.
But then going back to Martie, to me, the way I understood what you're saying, it's like you have CDL drivers. They have the license and you're asking for very specific experience in driving. And a person that's never hauled oil and they have flatbed experience or driving experience, they're not going to know anything right off the bat. It's going to have a learning curve, and there's going to be a greater chance of mistakes being made. Mm-hmm. And those those mistakes carry with them consequences in the long run when people come back and they say, hey, you violated my XYZ rights or you did XYZ wrong?
Well, in this case, it's extremely important, and I think the people of Roma should be very aware of this, because in terms of the city as an entity, as a public entity, the consequences could be very serious. When the city council, for example, or the city administration is given wrong advice, and I'm not saying that it's being done on purpose, but maybe for lack of knowledge or lack of experience, it could have grave consequences, because the city deals with lots of state, federal monies, deals with the general public interest, I mean, it's just a whole list of things.
I want to get my hands on the defects cases from the schools, because I suspect from seeing it in the appeals case that I saw that the school board had some part of creating that lawsuit. And I want to see if that's a pattern that people are going to see throughout the different lawsuits. And in this scenario, it seems to me like there's a possibility for this person to create a situation where someone's going to have to come back and sue the city, and then we're going to start seeing this pattern of someone deliberately messes up, like when they're trying to beat down the doors in RGCCISD and they're breaking Texas Opens Meeting Act laws and whatnot. They're just creating all this havoc to create and generate business for lawyers that taxpayers end up paying.
That's correct.
And so that's like one side of this many-headed monster. Why are they doing these things?
The only thing I can think, it's very hard for me to answer that, because, like I say, they don't talk to me. And I used to have a good relationship, a good working relationship with the city council prior to the November 2018 election. As soon as that election happened, all that changed. For some reason, they refused to talk to me anymore on a personal level or even in a public level. And that's okay. Not that they have to. I really lose nothing by them not talking to me. But if we want to have a functional city council, and we want to work for the better good of the public, of the citizens or the city, we have to have that communication. And I've said before, and I've said it to so many people, I'm willing to work with anybody as long as they're working for the greater good of the public and not of themselves or some political group.
Let's imagine that they were sitting here with us and they would argue and say, well, no, we did this because we are the people that have the public in interest. How would you respond to that?
Well, I disagree. I totally disagree. And I used to play that game. Like I said, I was part of that group, and I did the same things that they're doing now. But like I'll be the first to admit, I made lots of mistakes, and some of those I do regret. There are things that I should not have done. Joel Hinojosa has come out and said, well, you did the same thing a few years ago. And I said, yes, Joel, you and I played this game together. But I'm not playing it anymore because I saw that there was no good being done for the public at large.
What direction can you take me in to kind of say they kept going in this route and I started noticing these other things, and this is what they did and what they're doing, and it's going to hurt the city?
Well, it's fortunately so far we haven't had that problem. I think there's been a couple of instances where the city administration has found themselves a little frustrated because they do need expert legal advice in certain things. I'm not going to go into details. That has to do with the city administration. But they have told me that they have run into a couple of situations where these things happen, and basically they find themselves with their hands tied. Another thing that the city council has done, and then here with the aid of the attorney, which I think was clearly wrong, very wrong, is that soon after they appointed the city attorney, they went on and then advertised for a position of alternate municipal judge. Previously, the city of Roma was operating with the municipal judge, Mr. Ricardo Perez, who was doing a fine job, and he had two alternate municipal judges. So the city council advertised for the position of alternate municipal judge. We had 3 applicants. What the city council did in the end was dismiss Mr. Recio to appoint a young man, Juan Gilberto Escobar.
And I'm assuming that when you say you put the ad out, it was very similar to Martie, where you were looking for someone with a very specific type of experience.
No, in this case it was different because the city charter does not require that we, for example, have an attorney as municipal judge because of the lack of attorneys in Roma. And the language is very different. And it was very limited. The description the job description or the requirements were very different from the city attorney. Certainly, an attorney is a very much different position. But when we had the city council meeting to interview the applicants for alternate municipal judge, this young man didn't show up. In my opinion, the city council told him not to show up, thereby protecting and shielding him from public scrutiny. Now, I intended to interview the 3 applicants. 2 of them didn't show up. Mr. Recio did. And at that point, the city attorney, the official city attorney, Martie Garcia, came in, and she was basically, what she did was represent, defend, and protect the applicant for alternate municipal judge.
What?
Rather than defending the best interest of the city and of the taxpayers.
Doesn't that kind of undermine what she's doing then?
Well, what she told me, and with the support of Councilman Joel Hinojosa, Councilman Gilberto Ramirez, and Councilman Jose Guadalupe Cantu, the 4 of them basically ganged up on me like, how in the world do you intend to interview this applicant? Your advertisement didn't say that they were going to have to be interviewed. And
Yes, item 2019-109, interviews with applicants for the alternate municipal judge position.
okay, regarding this item, I in fact called the city manager on Monday and told him that I thought it absolutely pointless to be interviewing the alternate municipal judge applicants, seeing as how the city council, without ever having interviewed them, thought it was a good idea to appoint them anyway. And so I was just thinking that it seems absolutely ridiculous to me that would happen. If we would hire all our people, all our employees, just based on applications without interviews, I think there would be chaos in the workplace. But what's done is done. If this were a business and we ran it that way, we would definitely be out of business. So Martie Garcia was, in my opinion, and the way it was, and anybody can go back, this is public record. That meeting was videotaped, and the archives are there at City Hall. But she went back, like I said, defended, represented, and protected the applicant for a position, and said that I didn't have the right to interview him, and that the City Council didn't have the right to interview him.
What's wrong with asking a few questions? What's wrong with getting to
I don't know, and I believe this is probably the first time in the history of the city of Roma that someone has been granted a position with the city without ever having gone through an interview.
So basically, she was there to say, look, no matter what happens, you can't even ask, don't even ask this guy questions. He's coming in whether you like it or not, and that's the end of that. That's
Essentially what happened. Basically, she shielded him from public scrutiny.
Wow.
And that's where I have a problem with a city attorney. I don't know. I'm not an attorney, and I don't pretend to be one, but is she giving the city the right advice? Is this correct, that we cannot interview an applicant for a position? I don't think so.
Was she voted in?
She was not voted in.
So
she was voted in by her 3 councilmen friends. They're the ones that hired her.
Okay, so these guys bring in somebody who's basically intellectually muscling in or lawfully muscling in, saying the people can't even ask, or you as a representative of the people, you were voted in.
Yes.
You speak for the people.
Yes.
And you're an extension of the things that we should be thinking about. So as a taxpayer, I don't know that in the private sector, anyone in their right minds would just allow somebody to come in, no questions asked, thank you. You're not even going to see him. You're not even going to test him. How can you measure the 3 candidates to figure out who the best one is
if you don't have an opportunity to talk to them?
That's crazy.
That's correct. So basically, she shielded him from public scrutiny. Basically, what she did as the city attorney and her 3 councilman client, they silenced me and they essentially silenced the taxpayers of Roma.
The naked mole rat. Much about their behavior is strange. They spend their entire lives in virtually complete darkness, weaving their way through an underground network of burrows and tunnels.
The video where Crisanto was talking, or basically responding to Joel, and Joel was using some very nonsensical rhetoric, talking about, well, what if the insurance rep doesn't have this in his proposal? And I'm sitting there watching Crisanto show some serious restraint, a very aged and mature way of trying to deal with Joel's childlike rhetoric. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, you're bringing up a possibility of what if they're offering it, when I know for a fact insurance insurance companies are going to offer whatever the city wants, whatever. They
Right.
will tailor make a
Right.
proposal. What is it like to be working alongside of that kind of rhetoric?
It's extremely frustrating. I've been on the city council now for 11 years. I've been mayor for 3 years. And yes, politics always comes into play in an elected position like that, but it's never been this bad, where everything they do is geared toward a political gain or benefit for their political group.
So in that video, what were they trying to do?
Well, just going back to the position of the alternate municipal judge, and this is extremely important because the municipal court is an extremely serious venue that is there to service the residents of Roma and others that need the services of the court. City council is in charge of hiring the people that run that place, the judge and the alternate judges, and essentially we were silenced. I was silenced, and we were not allowed. In other words, they knew what they were going to do, and I had no business asking any questions.
So the city council as a whole didn't hire the municipal judge. It was
the vote of three against two. I was fortunate that Councilman Clyde Guerra voted along with me. Clyde and I do not have a personal relationship. I don't know him that well, but since he joined the city council also in November of 2018, he comes across to me as a cool and calm voice of reason. He always thinks before he speaks, and he's always very calm and very, very, very collected when he talks. And he's been very helpful in that respect. But we're outnumbered. Personally, my interest is trying to represent the best interest of the general public.
Do you think Clyde sees things the way you do?
I don't know. We've never talked about these things like that. But I would hope that he does.
Maybe we can bring him on and I'll ask him myself, because
Yes.
I'm trying to look at everyone, and in the minds of the layman voters like me, we just like to blank and say, tantos corruptos. But then the more I look at and listen to what the incumbents are saying right now, it's very difficult to deny that these sort of things happen where you fall into place and you have to kind of wake up and look around you and think to yourself, something isn't right.
Yeah, this is, of course, I'm expressing to you my point of view, the way I see things, my personal opinion. But again, like I say, I've been there for 11 years. I've worked with many different councilmen. I've worked with a few different mayors. I've worked with the city manager very well over the years. Clearly, I've been at odds with some of them over the years, but it's never been at a point that this is so grossly evident that their goal is purely political gain for them. Now, I would also ask you or say that maybe we can bring, or you can bring in these opponents or these guys from the city council and maybe talk to them as well.
I'd welcome them to come and sit down, but I seriously doubt a part of their strategy. This is so new that I don't even think that they've fully processed what is really happening. They don't know how to hide the truth when the people that are in there alongside of them are speaking the truth and against them because they're doing all these things. I don't think they want to sit down. I mean, how can they cover up what they're doing while being asked questions and being forced to answer? In other words, how can they hide what they're doing when they're being transparent?
Right. Well, again, this is the group that preaches transparency. Now, like I say, I'm giving you my personal point of view and my opinion, but I think it would be important that you talk to all of the city councilmen and maybe talk to each one of them individually and get their point of view and let the people decide maybe, if I'm being reasonable or if they're being reasonable.
How does it feel to be sitting down and thinking to yourself, hopefully somebody's going to listen to this? What do you think's going to come out of it?
Well, I hope people listen, and I hope people think that, and I hope people understand that I am trying to do the best that I can for the community. I believe in the term limits. We have those in the city right now, and I'm looking forward to continuing to serve, of course, but I'm also looking forward to when my term is up, because I don't want to be mayor forever. Un día le va a tocar a otro, and when it's somebody else's turn, I'm going to wish them well, and then you take over. That's why I think term limits are important, but certainly once my time is up, I want to leave things better than they were before, and not that I'm seeking recognition or anything, but I want at least the personal satisfaction that I was able to make a little bit of a difference.
As far as I know, you're the only one right now that is offering some kind of protection, because looking down the pipe, there's no telling what these guys can do. I've heard you mention the charter being under, threat?
Well, right now, that's another thing this political faction on the city council has done, is that they have called for a review of the city charter. And the way this came about, going back to the November 2018 election, soon after the election, the new member of the city council, Jose Guadalupe Cantu, started uttering the words, we have to change the charter. Now, I didn't know what he meant by that. About a couple of months later, he said it again. We have to change the charter.
Is that something that is common in cities?
It is common, but there's certain rules and protocols that go with it. In our case, in the city of Roma, when the charter was first organized 11, 12 years ago, something like that, the charter at that time was proposed to the voters. The voters approved it. And that becomes essentially the constitution of the city.
Okay.
In my opinion, this is not something that you go and change willy-nilly just because the city council changed.
Right.
Now, what changes is Councilman Cantu seeking? I don't know. He doesn't talk to me. He doesn't talk to the other councilman, Clyde Guerra. He doesn't talk to the city manager. Neither do his two friends on the city council. So we don't know what changes they're seeking. We can only guess. What happened next is that because he wanted to make changes on the charter, the way the original charter states, after it was approved by the voters, the original city charter says every 8 years the city council shall appoint a commission of citizens to review the charter and propose changes to it, because after 8 years the reasoning was that we will see what things worked, what didn't work. Maybe there are things we can improve on. There may be changes in state law as they apply to cities, and we can adjust the charter that way.
So it's not ironclad. It's still like a living document.
Yes, it is, but it provides a time every 8 years. So after 8 years, we, the city council at the time the mayor was Freddie Guerra, I was a councilman, we appointed a charter commission of, I believe, 12 or 15 residents, citizens of Roma, to review the charter. They have 9 months to do their work, and then they make proposals or recommendations to the city council.
So the people are actually brought in to be a part of it also?
Yes, it's made up of citizens only. City council members cannot be part of it. City employees cannot be part of it. City attorneys cannot be part of it. It has to be strictly citizens of Roma.
Wow, okay.
And, that way, it's basically, I guess, democracy in work, where you have the citizens propose which is the changes that we want to our government. Okay, so after 8 years of the first city charter, we appointed that commission. They did their work. They did it well. They had the advice of a competent attorney, specializes in municipal law and knows home rule law. And they made the proposals to the city council. City council debated it, modified it, tweaked it a little bit, and proposed it to the voters. The voters approved the changes. Okay, that was 3 years ago. So we're not due for another review until 5 years from now, but under the charter. Councilman Cantu wants changes now because he came into office and apparently the city charter did not suit him. So it didn't suit him, and again, we don't know what changes he seeks because he doesn't talk to anyone, but we can only suspect. In my opinion, I believe they're seeking changes in the authority of the city manager, very likely, and the other one is on the term or the requirement to hire and fire the city manager. Currently, the city charter says that to hire or fire the city manager requires a supermajority, that being 4 out of 5 councilmen. I believe what they want to change is to change that to a simple majority. That way he and his 2 friends on the council can terminate the city manager. Again, this is my opinion. These are the only things that we can think because, like I said, they don't talk to us.
Let me see if I grasp this. What could potentially happen is that the city manager, who's pretty much in control of the hiring, the firing of a lot of things, including the police and whatnot, he, in order to get swapped out, needs to have a supermajority. In other words, you guys, political or not, you got to get 4 out of 5 of you guys to agree.
Yes.
The possibility exists that they could change that so that their little group of, we want to do whatever we want, don't interview people, just don't even come in, you got the job, don't sweat it. And they want to do that to the city manager, the guy that's responsible for the cops.
Yes, that's correct.
It's
insane. It's insane if you think about it. But I believe that's what they want to do. Well, again, I don't know for sure. Now we have to let the charter commission run its course and let them do their work. We will see what proposals they're going to make to the city council.
You got to leave the cookie jar out on the table and let the kids kind of reach in.
Right. This is one of the questions that they've already brought up. The charter commission has already asked, why does it require, or one member of the commission has asked, why does it require a supermajority to hire or fire the city manager? So it's something that they're going at.
So that kind of gave it away.
Well, that's one of the things that they've already asked. Now, another thing that they've already asked, and this one, you're probably going to laugh about this, but one of the members on the charter commission already asked, why does the charter require the city manager to have experience? I'm serious. That question came up already, and I mean, you're not running a candy store. You're running a city. Clearly, you want somebody with experience.
Come in and get your experience. Don't worry about it. You
Right.
don't
This
have-
this is not the type of job where you can get on the job training. You have to have somebody that has experience. It's extremely important because you're talking about the management of an entity that's responsible for 12 to 15,000 residents. Besides the employees of the city, we got infrastructure. We have the financial side of it. We've got we deal with so many state and governmental agencies. It's just a very complex and very difficult job. Clearly, you want somebody with experience. And regarding all of this, well, I'm regressing here, but it's like when we go back to talk about the alternate municipal judge, and I did mention this to the city council. I told them, if you guys were running a business, you'd be out of business because you're going to hire somebody just because they want the job.
Yeah.
That's not the way to run anything.
And learning costs money by mistakes.
Yes, but the municipal court is not a place for learning.
Right.
Because you're dealing with matters that affect people's lives. Now, again, in my opinion, and I know because I used to be associated politically with this group, but what they do is they'll use the municipal court. They're going to use this young man to pardon citations and other things like that in exchange for votes at the next election.
So they're initially buying votes by forgiving trespasses on the voters' own laws.
Yes. Now, and I'll be also the first to admit I've done that before. There's many of us that do that. I have called on Judge Pettis probably 2 or 3 occasions and asked him to pardon a citation. One was, I believe, a speeding ticket for my wife. He was gracious enough to do it, but I didn't ask for anything in return, and neither did he. And then I've had a couple of customers at my place of business that asked me if I could help them with the speeding ticket or something like that, and Judge Pettis was good to do it.
Well, I mean, who hasn't?
But I didn't ask those customers for votes in exchange or anything else.
Right.
But yeah, like you say, who hasn't? And I'm not saying that it's wrong, but to do it strictly for the purpose of soliciting votes is wrong.
But how serious could it get? Because, I mean, I'm looking at Leti Garza Galvan's record, and I'm seeing theft. I'm seeing a lot of theft, getting erased, How far will a municipal judge go, and what are we looking at as far as like a threat level?
I really don't know how to answer that, but I think that's something that the residents and citizens of Roma should keep a very close eye on.
I think sometimes some of these judges are kind of selected by the people knowing full well that, hey, I'm going to call you, and at the very least you're going to reduce the amount or whatnot or help me out.
Yeah. And again, I don't have a problem with that. We all do that. That's okay. We do it, from time to time. When it's done on a regular basis, especially during political season, it's clearly wrong.
What you're saying is it's not just as easy as saying, hey, judge, can you help me out on this ticket? It's more like the judge saying, hey, I can help you out on this ticket, but you got to vote and let these guys steal money from all these grants and stuff.
Well, yes.
Yeah, that's definitely 2 very different things that we're looking at. One of the things that I've suspected is that these people are all working together. I see them campaigning. I see this very deep-rooted devotion, almost like a cult. They support each other 100%. People are blindly hiring people. I wasn't aware that without experience, a person could just start, managing a city or as a lawyer just coming in, no knowledge of municipal law and taking over that job. This campaigning has been going on, like you made mention, from 2012, 2013. I suspect that they're pulling monies, I could be wrong, from different sources and using taxpayer money to campaign.
That's very hard to answer, but it's very possible. But I really can't answer that because I don't know. And talking again about the city charter, at the point where the charter commission that's currently been appointed comes up with the proposed changes and the proposed recommendations, the next step is that they have to have a couple of public hearings where they're going to propose these changes to the city charter. Those have to be published in a newspaper. They have to be scheduled. After that, they then present a report to the city council and basically say our work is done and these are the proposed changes that we are asking you to put to the voters. So at that point, the city council can have a workshop to discuss the proposed changes that came from this charter commission.
What's a workshop? workshop? I've heard it used before.
Well, a workshop is where we get, it's a more of an informal meeting. It's still an official meeting and it has to be called and posted 72 hours in advance. And those are open to the public. And so we basically go down, instead of sitting atop the dais where we hold our city council meetings, we go down to a conference table and sit around and talk. And it's more of a free and open exchange of discussion among the city council. City manager will be there as well. And so we basically will discuss the proposed changes that are being proposed by the Charter Commission, and then make a determination if we want to tweak them or adjust them or change them, or may possibly eliminate one or remove one or something like that.
But if these guys remove the supermajority, nobody's going to see any of that.
Well, it will be discussed during the public hearings, and it will be discussed. You better believe I'll discuss it at the workshop.
Good.
Because I think it's a very important protection, not for the city manager, when you're talking about the supermajority required to hire or fire him. I see it as a protection, not for the city manager, but as a protection for the city and the citizens. Because we cannot, and that's another point that I make here, the city charter should not be changed every 4 years when the council changes.
Right.
That's wrong. It's wrong. It should be the constitution of the city. If there's a new member of the city council, the council changes, a different faction takes over, or different individuals take over, whatever the case may be, they should adapt themselves to the charter and work with it and abide by the charter.
And
it's a constitutional type document.
And it kind of discourages factions in a way.
Well, yes, it should, and it should. Again, I'm not going to be there forever, so I'm not looking at something that's going to be benefit for me or for the city manager or anybody else. But I'm thinking about the greater good of the community in the long run. Now, if we were going to go out and change the charter every 4 years and then fire the city manager every 4 years, there is no continuity in the government in the way it is written. There's no continuity in the city in the way it is managed. They're walking into very dangerous territory if these are the changes they're seeking.
And once your term ends, it's not like, okay, now you're irrelevant to the city, you were mayor. You are a taxpayer, you are a citizen.
Yes, but what Councilman Cantu and his friends on the council have to keep in mind, and so does the Charter Commission have to keep in mind, that in 4 years the city council could change, and then all of this could change. In other words, it seems to me, and again, in my opinion, that they want to change the city charter to suit the current city council. And it shouldn't be that way. The city charter should be made to suit the public at large, the general public.
Right, but then it just makes it harder to steal money because you really want to align yourself to being in power.
Well, clearly, if they can appoint their own city manager has access to the funds, and it's all about the money in the long run. And with this political group, that's the bottom line. It's all about the money.
Item 2019-111, discuss and take possible action on the appointment of a charter review commission in accordance with section 1106 of the City of Roma Charter to review the operation of the city government under the present charter.
Chris, regarding this item?
Councilman Cantu asked that item to be placed on the agenda.
Mr. Cantu, can you explain to City Council and to the public what it is that we're pursuing here?
Yes, I read on the current charter that the current one allows it, and I wanted to get the community involved in the process. This will provide more transparency, and which is in the best interest of the city.
Is there any particular parts of the charter that...
Not really, because many times a lot of people have asked me do this, do that, and I was told we have a charter that we need to follow, and that's why I want to inform the community in the process to do that.
Okay, well, actually the process of appointing a charter commission is not really to inform the community, but it's rather to study the charter and make recommendations to the City Council for possible changes. With that being said, is there any other discussion, or is there anything else you would like to add?
No, but like I said, I want to get to see a little bit more into the charter.
Okay. Any other discussion or nothing else? Okay. Is there any member of the City Council going to want to take action on this item?
So move to approve.
Okay. We have a motion to approve by Councilman Hinojosa.
I'll second that motion.
It's all about the money in the long run. And with this political group, that's the bottom line. It's all about the money.
I noticed that from Roma to Rio.
Yes. It's how to get your hands on the money. That's all it is. And the problem with that, and the biggest problem with that, is not your money. It's taxpayer funds, it's public funds.
They would, in essence, be in control of a lot of jobs also.
A lot of jobs, yes. The city has approximately 140 employees, and many of them are concerned right now as we speak because of the change in the city council.
I saw Joel immediately after I started kind of letting information out about his past go and take photographs with city employees.
Yes, I saw that as well.
And I found it very odd, and I'm thinking to myself, man, you have no idea the wrong message that you're putting out there.
Mm-hmm.
When in a time when he should be coming out and saying, no, we're not like that, he's basically showing me that he is, in fact, this mafia type of mentality councilman.
Yeah, well, I go and visit city employees from time to time as well. I don't take pictures of myself with them, but I do go visit them, and I thank them for the work that they do.
But these guys seem to never miss a photo op.
Well, that's what's important to them, that they be seen doing those things. But I interact with the city employees on a daily basis. I run into them all over town. I always thank them for the work they do. Talking about the city charter, once the city council has the workshop where we determine what, if any, items we're going to put on the ballot for the voters ultimately will have the decision whether to approve the changes to the city charter or not. And this is going to be the final opportunity to stop anything that I or other citizens believe is wrong. And if it's necessary to start a campaign against, in other words, vote no against the city charter changes, we'll have to do that. And I've talked to a lot of people. A lot of people have approached me. I've talked to others, and the community is ready. They're ready for this campaign if it has to happen. Now, if the Charter Commission and the City Council are approving changes that I believe are good and the public believes are good, we'll go along and approve those changes. But I think that no good can come out of this when the whole notion behind appointing a charter commission is simply a new councilman didn't like the charter and says we have to change it. But ultimately, the voters will have the last word, and we shall see. The charter commission still has a few months to work, and we want to give them the time and the respect that they deserve, and let them finish their work, and hopefully they'll do a good job for the citizens, and hopefully they'll think long term what's best for the city. Regarding the city manager position, and this reminds me back to the original charter commission of which I was a member, some of the discussion and some of the argument in that first charter commission was that we're giving too much power to Crisanto. And I remember very clearly, I told them we are not giving anything to Crisanto. We are giving this to the city manager. It's not always going to be him. And the council has to remember that it's not always going to be you on the city council.
It's kind of modeled after the school board giving the power to the superintendent the way it should be, where the superintendent
is the chief administrative officer.
Right.
Exactly. And that's the way, that is the classic model in this country. That's the way business works. That's the way government works. That's the way it works best. But it's real important that the Charter Commission understand and the City Council understand that it's not about the city manager. It's not about you on the City Council, because neither the city manager nor you are always going to be there.
Now, I know you don't read minds, and I know that it's very difficult to cast an opinion on something, but I'm looking at these people being in control of the majority of the Rio Grande City CISD school board, and I see the way that they have placed the superintendent in there, not only of their choosing, who is in line with what they want to do, but they gave her a hefty raise by comparison. Is that kind of what we can kind of look at and say, look, what's happening in Rio is kind of what's happening in the city?
It's very possible. Like I said, you're right. I can't read minds. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's very possible that they want to appoint their own city manager at a very high salary. And that's where the public needs to know what's going on. Now things that I have recently posted on Facebook is done only to inform the public of things that I think are being done wrong.
I appreciated it because I could read it, and it was almost like a window, like a door.
Well, let me tell you, sir, in the last week, since I posted that thing on Facebook regarding about who's qualified and who's not qualified, the response from the public in Roma has been extremely overwhelming. I am extremely surprised by the number of people that have approached me, that have called me, have texted me, have emailed me. I've got several people from Rio Grande City. I've got 2 or 3 or 4 from Rio Grande City that called me to thank me, and they say this is really surprising and very refreshing to see something like this. I got a call from someone somebody in McAllen, one as far away as San Antonio that read that also. But in Roma, the response has been overwhelming.
You're making history. You're changing a trend.
Well, a couple of days ago, I was at the post office in Roma, and a woman walked up to me. I don't know her, and I didn't ask her name, but we spoke for a long time. And she asked me, ¿Usted es el mayor? And I said, yes. Le dije, sí. And so dijo, pues qué bueno, acabo de leer el enlace y lo quiero felicitar y darle las gracias por lo que hiciste, porque ya era tiempo que alguien nos manteniera informados. And that's the key word, informados. My intent is only to inform the public. If anybody is, and I know there's people that disagree with me, and I'm willing to speak to anybody anytime about any of these things. But again, like I said, the response has been overwhelming. I mean, the number of people that have come forward, basically, essentially to thank me, and they were so happy that somebody finally spoke up and brought it out.
I really appreciate it also because when I'm looking at incumbents, I'm trying to find the negative side, and then you just came out and said, it's not our credit to take. It was the city managers, and it was the help of the DOT that helped in that project.
Well, in that post, what bothered me was a city councilman wanting to take credit for something he had absolutely nothing to do with, and that bothered me because this is basically lying to the public and trying to. I mean, what is it with trying to make yourself look good? What's the point? So I wanted to set the record straight there. And a lot of the things that happen in the city, neither I nor the city council have anything to do with that. That's why we have the city administrator and his staff. That's their job.
Right, but you see how unique that is. You see how what you're doing is so against the grain, and it resonates with people because who likes having credit taken away from them?
Well, yeah, but when the credit was never mine, why should it be? Nothing's being taken away from me because it was never mine. And again, I think it's important that we give credit where it's due.
I certainly agree. And when I look at Joel Hinojosa walking over that bridge saying, oh, we promised to get money from everywhere, from the state, from the local, and it's in reference to the drainage. And a lot of the people on the Action Now Starr we're finding out were the owners of those lots, and Fernando Peña being one of them, and also on the Zoning and Planning Commission.
Yeah.
To me, there was no way that we could find out what these people are like, what these people are doing, without someone like you stepping up and saying, hey, whether you like it or not, I'm going to tell it like it is.
Well, I think it's important. The people need to hear that. And now that you mentioned the Planning and Zoning Committee, that's a committee appointed by the City Council, and they do have a lot of work to do. They work with the planning director and with the city manager, and right now it's an active committee, and they're doing well. Fernando Peña has been a member of that committee for years. I would say for at least a decade, maybe more.
No lo quiero remedar when he says it in the video, pero dice, mi puestecito que tenía.
See, that's what I'm talking about. Now, he's been a member of Planning and Zoning for a long time. So a few years ago, I think it was when I first became mayor, about 3 years ago, with the support of the city council, we removed him from that committee, and he was very upset. He was mad at me, and he said that he belongs on that committee. The way I saw it and the way I explained it to the city council, and I had the support of the city council then, was that the fact that he is the only developer in Roma creates a conflict of interest with him being on that committee.
Well, yeah.
The Planning and Zoning Committee essentially determines the path of growth for the city of Roma. And being a developer, in my opinion, he had no business being on that committee. He was mad, he was upset with me for a long time. And Fernando, I have nothing against him personally. I consider him a friend, but I saw it wrong, and in the best interest of the city, he had no business there. And I explained it to him, Fernando, without even trying, you're causing a lot of problem for the city administration, for the Planning and Zoning Committee, and for the public at large. So this past December, after the November 2018 elections, City Council went and put him back in.
Oh, well, so they did that too. They brought him back in. They brought
him
Martie
back in, yes, because he feels that he belongs on that committee, that he deserves to be on that committee.
Has he done any good? Has the city grown more under his watch?
I can't answer to that, but I do know that the Planning and Zoning, he's no longer chairman of that committee, but he is a member right now. But that committee is doing well. They're doing their work, and they're doing it well. But he is a minority voice on that committee. But nonetheless, minority voice or not, in my opinion, he does not belong there.
One of the things that I also saw you post about was the EDC and the fact that the most important thing that we're focusing on was putting Joel as president.
Well, again, that's my opinion. And the reason I said that was because since December, when they removed me from the EDC board, and which is fine, and I posted that as well. I've been on the EDC for 20 years or more. It's somebody else's turn, and I don't need to be there. But if you're going to remove me and other business owners and managers like you did, put in people that are competent. And what they did was they appointed Joel and some other political donors and other people. They have not had a single meeting since then. Well, we're already approaching the end of July. We're going on 7 months without a meeting of the EDC. So my point is that the EDC now has gone the way of the Chamber of Commerce, which is virtually non-existent.
I was looking at the Chamber of Commerce's Facebook page, and they haven't posted anything new since some month in 2018.
Well, if there is an active Chamber of Commerce in Roma, the business community does not know about it.
I look at Joel coming into the EDC, and first of all, what does the Economic Development do?
Well, the Economic Development Corporation in Roma, and like I said, I've been a member of it for many years. The things that we have done essentially is assist the city with bond debt obligation, some improvements on parks, and some road improvements and things like that. Unfortunately, and it's not the members of the EDC's fault, but unfortunately, the problem with the Roma EDC is a lack of funds. Our budget is so limited. Our annual budget is currently about $200,000. In an operation of a city, with $200,000 doesn't go very far. The reason that happens is that the only source of funding for the EDC is a portion of the sales tax. In Roma, the economy is depressed, sales tax is low, and thus, or therefore, the funding for the EDC is low. But at least we were doing something, you know.
Over time, let's say, just 10 years kind of hanging out and not really doing much, you could accumulate something to do something.
Well, yes, and in recent years, what the EDC has done, we have worked on historic restoration. And the thought process there is that if we can at least we do have a segment of tourism in Roma every year with the birding center and bird watchers and butterfly watchers. And it does attract people to Roma, but what they do, they come here, they see the buildings, they're so beautiful, the antique buildings, all that, but they get to see them from the outside and they leave because there's nothing else for them to do. So the idea here was let's restore the buildings and put them to public use. We can lease them at minimal rent so local business can open gift shops, coffee shops, souvenir shops, and so on in the historic district and at least try to bring a little bit of life to it. The problem with this thing is that historic restoration is outrageously expensive and it's very hard to come by restoration funds. State grants are limited. Federal grants are very limited, but we're doing what we can. But at least we were doing something. Right now, the EDC is doing nothing.
I'm seeing this pattern in Joel.
Okay, well, before we go there, going back to the historic restoration of the EDC, and talking about the EDC, one of the comments that I hear from Joel Hinojosa is that I had no problem when the Roma EDC bought the Manuel Guerra store and 2 other properties in Roma.
And what was he implying?
Well, those properties were bought from some relatives of mine. They were the owners of the property, but I was not involved in the negotiation of the price. City manager took care of that completely. I was a member of the EDC. I was president of the EDC, but the EDC board voted unanimously, let's acquire these properties so we can eventually... You see, these historic properties being under ownership of the city, it's a lot easier to acquire grants. If they're privately owned, the cost of restoration is prohibitive, and those buildings were just going to deteriorate. So we thought it was important that the city acquire them so we can preserve them. So Joel's thing is that I had no problem buying those buildings when we bought them from a relative or it was an uncle of mine, but I was not involved in the negotiation of the price or anything like that. I was just a member of the EDC board that voted in favor. The entire board voted in favor.
I don't even think it's Joel's thing. I think he's incapable of thinking at that level, and I think he's responding on behalf of the people that are telling them how to respond.
It's very likely that's true, but when I think about it, I think it was extremely important that the city acquire those properties because it was either that or else they're going to deteriorate. It's just going to be even more expensive. The Manuel Guerra store in particular has been described as one of the most important historic buildings in Texas. So it's very important that we restore it. And that's what the EDC was last working on, and we currently have an architect working on the design, and we have about $1 million available for restoration there.
And the paperwork is there, and so what?
Oh, the paper trail is there. Anybody can go and investigated. Money never crossed my hands. I didn't touch a nickel of it. In fact, we even paid less than the asking price because the city manager is a very, very ruthless negotiator when it comes to funds and public money and all that. And he's excellent at managing the public funds. And so the family needed to sell. The family that sold it, and it only made sense for the city to acquire it. And I'd be the first to admit, yes, it was bought from a relative of mine. I've got nothing to hide.
But they make you feel guilty about it with this
Well,
double
they try to make
standard.
me feel guilty, but I don't, because I know that we did the right thing for the city.
Right, and I see it as just another example of that childlike behavior. Hey, at what point do you grow up and realize it's a historical building and everything was done in the open?
Yes.
Let's move on and get past that.
Right.
But Joel's not going to let it go. He's going to use
Right.
it every time he wants
Well,
to
he can
push.
use it all he wants, but I'm right here, right now, sitting down, admitting that I don't have a problem with it because I know I did what was best in the best interest of the city and the public at large for Roma. Because, like I said, I'm not going to be around forever, but that building will if we take care of it, and it'll be there for future generations. And it's not mine. It belongs to the city and to the citizens. And our intent is to restore it and lease it at a very minimal lease so that it can be put to public use and let people open businesses there.
I look at him as president of the EDC. And for the EDC to say, well, there's not much going on, and you're actually providing a reason for it. There isn't really much money to do anything.
Yes, but we were at least doing something. Right now, they're doing nothing.
And that scares me because I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, they're not saying anything to anybody. They're not talking to anybody about around the circle. What's going to happen few months, couple years down the road when we look back and we'll realize there's no money in the EDC?
Well, there is money there, and it's managed well. The city manager keeps a good eye on all that.
Okay.
So I'm not concerned about that. The EDC board members, we do not have access to checkbooks or anything like that. I mean, clearly we do sign the checks, but everything has to clear the city manager first. And I have all my faith and confidence in the city manager.
That's great because I look at Joel and I just see another rat from the bunch, and I can't help but see that now after everything that's coming up and surfacing. They tried to remove you from the EDC.
They did remove me from the EDC. They did. And I say that's fine. I've been on the EDC for over 20 years. It's somebody else's turn. But put in people that are qualified, putting people that are willing to attend, putting people that are willing to work. They've tried to have 2 meetings in the last 2 months, and they can't get a quorum. So the last meeting was in January, and that was the meeting that I called, and that's where they reorganized and appointed Joel as president. Well, a few months ago, City Council, Jose Ramirez Cantu, put on the agenda request for qualifications, another RFQ for insurance services for the group health insurance for the city employees. Now, these insurance agents that have that get a very good commission. They make money from it. And I know that because I do. But the insurance agent that we had prior for the last couple of years was an agent that the city manager hired, and city council at that time, we allowed him to do it to try to keep it non-political. He hired one from McAllen that was very non-political. He declined to bid on it this time around because he knew it was political. And this is one where I didn't know him. None of the city council knew him. And so we had 2 companies submit a bid, and one of them did show up, a young lady from Roma that represents an insurance company, and she went in there and she wanted to make a presentation. City council did not allow her to, and then the agent that they selected didn't even show up. Very
so the
likely,
person that showed up didn't get to do the presentation.
no. She submitted a binder, a rather large binder, probably 125, 150 pages, very detailed with a lot of information about the company she represents and everything they had to offer. The other insurance agent that had submitted a bid turned in a 2-page, I believe it was 2 pages, maybe 1 page, maybe 2 pages, 3 pages in a little notebook, and that was all. He didn't show up, and in my opinion, he was probably told that he didn't have to show up because he was going to get the job anyway.
Right.
And so that was the one they selected. I don't remember his name, but it was a gentleman named Cuellar from West Laco.
No interview, no nothing, 2 pages.
No interview, no presentation, no discussion. Yeah, they just hired him. And as I understand, and just again, these are things that I hear, but I don't know them to be true, that he happens to be a friend of either one of the councilmen or one of their friends.
Did anyone by any chance mention that he was the best man for the job?
No.
Okay.
There was hardly any discussion regarding this item. When the item came up for discussion, immediately those three members of the city council made a motion, second, and approved it. I voted against it. If I recall correctly, Clyde Guerra voted against it. We didn't have enough information, in my opinion. We didn't have a presentation. Didn't even get to meet the man because he didn't show up, but he got the job. And I know, like I've said before, I used to be politically associated with this group. I know how they work. In prior years, when I was part of it, they will appoint an insurance agent of record for a group health insurance either in the school district or the city. And that agent makes quite a bit of money in commissions, but is then required to turn around and make donations to the next political campaign. In this case, the next political campaign is for the school board next year. There will be a city council election next year as well. In next year's, this is November 2020 that I'm talking about, my position for mayor is up, and it is my intention to run. And the other one is Clyde Guerra, because he ran for the unexpired term of Ramiro Saravia, so it was only for 1 year. So Clyde and I are up for re-election next year. It is very likely that we will both have an opponent. I am expecting it. This will be my 5th election since I joined the city council, and it'll be the first time that I have an opponent. My previous 4 elections I've been unopposed. I look forward to it and bring on whoever it is because I don't care. Win or lose, my goal is only to serve the public.
Well, your goal might be to serve the public, but inadvertently you've just kind of raised the bar for everybody going up against you.
But I don't care. Bring it on.
Bring it on. What's your favorite thing of Roma?
Well, the fact is that I was born in Roma. I was born at the old Ramirez Hospital in front of the church. I was raised in Roma, and I've lived there all my life. So certainly I care about the city. I really do. And like I've said before, my only intention is to leave things better than they were when I got there. And after that, and I do not intend to do this forever. Once my term is up, I'm out and let somebody else take over, and I'll wish them the best.
I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you very much, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Chris, can you explain a little bit here? We've got, I believe we have 2 proposals. Is that correct?
For health insurance, we have 1.
We have 1, okay.
And it's the Fuera and Associates.
And are they are not here this afternoon? They are not here?
No. I don't think so.
Okay. Well, there's not a lot of information here. It's a 1 page here. It's not, I have never seen an answer to an RFQ for any type of service, all condensed into 1 page. But that's what we have. And
So move to appoint Cuellar and Associates.
we have a motion to approve.
Second motion.
We have a second. All those in favor, signify by raising your right hand. We have 3 in favor, all those opposed, and 2 against. Next item.